You're at the intersection with Michael Popok here on the Midas Touch Network. And do I have a lineup for you of things you need to know at the intersection of law and politics, inside and outside the courtroom? Let me just give you the rundown, the lineup for today. The Posse Comitatus Act, Donald Trump's phony press conference in order to step on the news story about Epstein scandal and the cover-up related to it, and the start of a 3-day trial against the Trump administration, the first of its kind in San Francisco in front of Judge Breyer. Then we've got developments in the Epstein case because it's important to the victims. It's important that we understand sometimes it's the crime and the cover-up. And we've got a federal judge in New York, Judge Engelmeyer, who sets the record straight in support of the victims, to remind people that Ghislaine Maxwell, is not a saint. She's a convicted sinner, and other things in his 38-page decision. Then we got to turn to Trumponomics and the economy. Every day, first video on Legal AF YouTube channel that I also curate starts with a Trumponomics analysis. And here we've got the phony pick by Donald Trump to head the Bureau of Labor Statistics. He's trying to create new numbers, manufacture numbers, cook the books, and he's hired a chief chef and Dr. E.J. Antoni. Who's that guy? You're going to know by the time the intersection is over. In addition, we've got new numbers coming out of the Congressional Budget Office. We can't rely on anything coming out of the executive branch. We have to get our economic data from independent sources, visitors and tourism bureaus, from manufacturing societies and industry sector societies and agencies and companies that generate their own statistics that we can rely on, because we can't rely on Donald Trump. And now we've got the Congressional Budget Office with their new data where they took the budget bill, the bill that Donald Trump passed, and had it run through a waterfall to determine who's hurt and who's helped, who's made poorer, who's made richer. And I don't think you're going to be shocked by the results, but we need to talk about it now. In addition, we've got new data showing that the economy is in free fall. There's no other way to put it. And we don't have the full tariff impact yet baked. It's important to pin Trumponomics on Donald Trump and on MAGA that support him and enable him. And we're going to do that together. I'll also touch on what's going on in Ukraine and why the strategy of Donald Trump is doomed for failure, and all the rest here on the intersection. Welcome. The brothers were like, Popok wants his own show, and we're going to give it to him. And you have supported me. It's been heartwarming. It warms, what's the phrase my late mother used to use? It warms the cockles of my heart to see 2, 3, 4, 500,000 people every week here on this brand new podcast. You want to help support it? It's easy. Hit the free subscribe button on Midas. Do the same thing on Legal AF. But this podcast itself, it lives on an audio platform over on Apple, over on Spotify. And download it, listen to it, set your reminders, follow it, leave 5-star reviews and comments. It's important. It helps. It's the bellows that kind of take the little embers here and make it into a roaring fire of resistance here on the intersection. Let's get to it with the Posse Comitatus Act. After our Reconstruction period, the Civil War, in order to resolve an issue regarding presidential candidates like Rutherford B. Hayes, there was a deal that was struck to assure the Confederacy that if they came back to the Union, they wouldn't have to worry about federal Union troops in their states trying to enforce domestic law enforcement policy. They didn't want Lincoln's troops, so to speak, in their states. They just come back to the Union. So the Posse Comitatus Act was passed. We got a current version of it. It started in 1867, or 1878. I'll get the number right. I'm on a little bit of cough syrup here, folks. I'm sorry about that. And it says that no one, including the commander-in-chief, can use the armed forces, the weight of the power, the awesome power of the U.S. military on domestic soil for domestic law enforcement purposes. The difference between that and commandeering the National Guard like they did in California is that if the president can't hold the line and can't execute faithfully laws with regular forces, they can use the National Guard of a state. That was the whole argument in California. But you can't violate the Posse Comitatus Act and turn a Marine into a cop carrying the weaponry, the awesome weaponry of the U.S. military. So Judge Breyer, Charles Breyer, not to be confused with his brother, who's a retired Supreme Court Justice, Stephen Breyer, he issued a ruling a couple of months ago against Trump and for the state of California, ruling that Donald Trump violated the statute that allowed, under limited circumstances, a president to commandeer a state's National Guard for his purposes, finding that the judge found that none of the conditions were present. This wasn't a rebellion, that he had no problems executing the laws with his regular forces. He didn't even try, and other things. He also found that Donald Trump violated not only the Constitution, but the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which provides that the power that's not reserved for the federal government is given to the states. On the issue of whether the Trump administration also violated the Posse Comitatus Act, Judge Breyer said, not today. I need more evidence. I need more time. Let's set a trial for August. And then the Trump administration appealed his ruling about the National Guard commandeering and went up to a 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit. And they blocked Judge Breyer only on those issues. But the Posse Comitatus Act issue still around. Hence the trial that started yesterday. Day 2 was today. First day of the trial was about putting on California's case. Now, I just had the California Attorney General, Rob Bonta. You're going to see his interview tomorrow on Legal AF, address and brief our audience about the case. He's one of 23 Democratic attorneys general, and they're out tip of the spear defending democracy with the superpowers that the Supreme Court gave the state attorneys general in the nationwide injunction case, where they said, well, we don't like in the birthright citizenship case, the Supreme Court said, we're not ready to rule on birthright citizenship, but we don't want federal district court trial level judges having this type of injunction power, nationwide injunction power. That's for us. Except if states are involved. Well, there you go. You just superpowered and turbocharged state attorneys general to bring these cases. And that's what they've done about birthright citizenship, about funding, about women's rights, about immigration rights. And Rob Bonta and his team fighting against the Trump administration's attempted takeover of the state of California. Now, to step on the story about the trial and the first day of the trial, and I'll tell you the report about that in a second. We just had the second day of trial today. What did Donald Trump do to divert attention from the trial? Political timing. Everything about Donald Trump is about political timing, stepping on the news story, grabbing the headlines, grabbing the news cycle. Something goes wrong in the world of Epstein, start an investigation about Obama, Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, about Senator Adam Schiff. Divert attention, distract everyone, take advantage and exploit mainstream media's short attention span and deficit disorder and their ADDism. We don't have ADDism when it comes to the media here on Legal AF and on the Midas Touch Network. We have fighter pilot vision. 270 degrees. We keep our hands on the control for you. And we follow stories and the continuity of stories and we explain them. I think that's why we're all here together at the intersection. And so when I see the news conference 2 days ago about the takeover of DC because Donald Trump's pet named Big Balls, a 19-year-old who's rummaging around your Social Security information and mine too, under the guise of Doge, when he gets, I don't know, carjacked or beat up by a bunch of 15-year-olds. Oh, then we have to bring the full weight of the federal government down on the District of Columbia. It's already a federal district. He's allowed to do certain things that he's not allowed to do in other places. I know a lot of people are like, New York's next. It's not next. DC is unique. It is a federal district, and it is ultimately controlled, many aspects of it, by the White House. Now, there's home rule. There's a mayor. There's a council. There's its own court system. Yes, that's true. But really, at any moment, any president can take over the police department for usually a limited period of time. Otherwise, you violate a little bit of the home rule. So you can do that there because that's a statute. And that's how the district was created and the rights given to the district in 1973. But you can't do that in the state of New York. They're not going to take over the police department. As bad as the mayoral issues are in New York City right now, Donald Trump's not going to appoint himself acting mayor or send in, one of his other Fox and friends to do it. But that was just to distract attention to allow Donald Trump to stand up and say, I'm a tough guy at home. I'm for law and order and crushing dissent. And I'm a peacemaker abroad. Although I defy you to show me the peace that he's made abroad, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's in Armenia, whether it's in India and Pakistan, or whether it's in Russia and Ukraine, where the victim is being left out of the negotiations, and the person responsible for making Zelensky feel better is J.D. Vance, who excoriated and clipped the balls publicly of Zelensky in a White House meeting several months ago and wagging his finger, and you should show respect. This is the guy through diplomacy that's going to get Zelensky to be okay with not being in the room to bargain with Putin? But I digress. So you've got a press conference where Donald Trump wants to distract your attention, but not ours and not this audience's attention, about what's happening about his 3-day trial, which he hates, in San Francisco. Day one of the trial, very well for California. Great testimony from a major general, a lieutenant colonel, whatever it was, testifying about how his loyalty was challenged by the Trump administration. General Grant had been in the Army for 33 years, and yet he was sidelined to allow Donald Trump's troops to come into MacArthur Park and scare the crap out of Los Angelinos. And so the evidence that was being put on today, because Judge Breyer, knowing that there was a Zoom of 1,000 people and an audience waiting with bated breath for this historic trial, he kind of said what this case was about. He kind of did the opening statement himself, and then he turned it over to witness presentation. And so all the witnesses gave great testimony for California, showing that the armed services, the armed forces of the Trump administration were involved with arresting people in the streets on domestic soil, which is a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. Day two, which was today, was the response by the Trump administration, mainly a legal argument. They put on a couple of witnesses, and then there's going to be more legal argument tomorrow. We're following this all very closely on Legal AF because, one, we need to follow it. Secondly, Adam Klasfeld, who runs All Rise News, he's sort of the legal journalist. We've relied on reporting by Adam Klasfeld from inside of courtrooms for years. He's now doing almost daily video reporting only on Legal AF. Come over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel, and catch Adam Klasfeld. We just put up today, this afternoon, a new video in which Adam, having sat through hours of cover-to-cover, coast-to-coast, gavel-to-gavel testimony in trial work today in the Posse Comitatus case, because he watched the Zoom. He couldn't get in the courtroom, but he watched the Zoom, gave some amazing inside the courtroom observations. And so you can watch that over there on Legal AF. So that's where we're at. What do I think is going to happen? And we'll talk about it maybe next week on the intersection next Tuesday, is that the Breyer is going to rule against the Trump administration. He's going to find violations of the Posse Comitatus Act. What the interesting note, what California is looking for is an injunction to stop future use of military on domestic soil, at least in California, to set that precedent. And in order to get an injunction, generally, you have to show that the harm that you're alleged happened to you is going to happen likely in the future. So you know what happened? The press conference today about the takeover of D.C. and the use of troops to make arrests. There's 23 arrests they just announced were made by law enforcement. I don't know, some combination of the FBI and the military. That's all Posse Comitatus Act violations, at least the military part. They pointed to that in the courtroom in real time, that press conference, to use as evidence of the ongoing future injunction matters that need future conduct that needs to be enjoined through the injunction. Again, Donald Trump fabricating and creating new evidence in a case in real time as we move forward. I'm not sure that's exactly what he had up his sleeve, but that's what he ended up doing. Let me transition now that I think the audience has a good briefing on the Posse Comitatus Act and attorney generals like Rob Bonta, again, a guest of Legal AF. You'll see him up there tomorrow on an interview. We also have a development in the Epstein case, a few developments. Last Wednesday, right the day after my intersection, when I was traveling in Chicago, hanging out with the Texas Democrats. I'm kidding, but I was in Chicago at the same time. The There's been multiple attempts by the Trump administration. I almost said the Epstein administration. It might as well be the Epstein administration. Have been going on to cover up the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. We can only guess why. Because they went through, 300 gigabytes of information, 2 tractor trailer trucks worth, and they concluded that Donald Trump's name was all over the Epstein files. I mean, how do you go from February, in which the Trump administration said, this is what Kash Patel said, no stone will be left unturned. Every document will be provided. There'll be no cover-up. It's exactly what we've been watching since February. Cover-up, rocks not overturned, and no transparency. And so we go from there. Then this past Wednesday, CNN gets word that there's going to be a big marshmallow roast over at J.D. Vance's house. And everybody's going to be there. Everybody in the Trump administration is going to be there. Department of Justice, the FBI, Susie Wiles, Chief of Staff, probably Stephen Miller. They're all going to meet to talk about J.D. Vance trying to be a problem solver. And what's the problem they're solving for? The Epstein cover-up. And according to insider who leaked, this was all about how do we fix the communications around the Epstein files. Right. The problem is the communications. This is a failure to communicate problem. Is that what this is? We got a failure to communicate? Yeah, that's not the problem. Yeah. The problem with the Lincoln assassination was not the news reporting around it. The problem was a president just had his head blown off in Washington, right? That was the problem. Same thing here. The problem is not how we communicate and mislead the American people. So that meeting gets moved to Washington, D.C., to the White House, probably because it's easier for people to come in and out without there being a reporter outside clocking off who's coming in and out, right? And Trump can pop his head in, Stephen Miller can pop his head in, I'm sure, and they can sneak a whole bunch of people in for this meeting. Meeting happens. The day of the meeting, last Wednesday, a reporter, I give her a lot of credit, intrepid reporter, asked a question of Trump the day of the meetings that night, with Vance standing next to him. Mr. President, is there going to be a meeting tonight in J.D. Vance's house about Epstein and other things? Oh, I don't know. You'll have to ask him. I don't know. J.D.? That's a lie. That's false. That's fake news. Was it? It happened. We got a leak about how it went down, that they're talking about Todd Blanche, about the second at command of the Department of Justice, about how he's going to leak or have a press conference about some, but not all of the Ghislaine Maxwell recordings, about her 9-hour interview with Todd Blanche. Is he going to go on Joe Rogan? I'm not making this up. Is he going to do a press conference? Is he going to do a slideshow, PowerPoint? What is he going to do? And then as a cover story, they fired a couple of FBI agents to act like they're rooting out corruption of the FBI. Yeah. And then J.D. Vance goes on Maria Bartiromo, chief propagandist for the Trump administration these days. And he actually says a few days later, he confirms the meeting he just said was fake, didn't happen. He then tells her, there was a meeting. It just wasn't at the time and place that CNN reported. That was the problem with the reporting, the time and place? Okay, go on. And we didn't talk about Epstein. That's bullshit. And we're going to call it bullshit because there's a leak. This is one of the leakiest administrations around. And we know they talked about Epstein. And then came J.D. Vance going on Sunday news shows trying to tamp down and take the oxygen out of the room and the air out of the ball about the Epstein crisis, which has put the Trump administration into a credibility tailspin. And he makes it worse because he starts to point the finger with his talking points to Biden. Biden had the files too. Why didn't he release them? Why do we have to release them? Well, first of all, if Biden or anybody in his administration thought that the Epstein files were interesting about Donald Trump, they would have released them, trust me. But at that moment, I don't think they were looking at the Epstein files. Were they covering up for other powerful Democrats? I don't know. I don't want a powerful cover up. I don't want a Democrat cover up of powerful people. Anybody that's in there that sexually abused girls and women, justice is coming. I don't care if it's Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Communist, Socialist, Marxist, Independent. I don't care. Nobody cares on the Democratic side. The people care who committed the crimes potentially, but we don't care. So all that did when J.D. Vance went on Bartiromo was to have left, right, and center all attack J.D. Vance and say, right, release the damn files, which takes us to Judge Paul Engelmeyer, who effectively said in 38 pages of a new federal order that he just issued, release the damn files. But he did more. He's one of 3 judges who had a motion to unseal grand jury transcripts about Maxwell and Epstein filed by the Trump administration, which is part of the charade to try to redefine what are the Epstein files. Or as I saw a banner over the Los Angeles freeway last week, release the files, not the pedophiles. Don't let Ghislaine Maxwell out. That's not what we want. We want the files released in their entirety. And we know what they are because Pam Bondi described them at one point in her career. So the 3 motions get filed. The redefinition process starts to try to rehabilitate Donald Trump. Then they want to rehabilitate by saying, oh, it's the grand jury. I'm in favor of the grand jury transcripts being released. And every judge that's looked at it, Judge Rosenberg in West Palm Beach, Judge Engelmeyer, and another judge in New York said, first of all, we can't release the files because you haven't given us proper cause under the federal criminal rules of procedure to violate the rule of secrecy around grand jury files. But I will this is what Judge Engelmeyer did. I will tell you there's nothing in there. That they were one-day grand juries that had a total between 2 grand juries of 2 witnesses who testified in summary fashion with no victims testifying and no evidence presented other than the sexual crimes alleged against Maxwell and Epstein. There's more in the public domain, Judge Engelmeyer said, than existed in the grand jury transcripts. So he structured his order in 3 ways. First part, he wanted to remind everyone and set the record straight that Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted by evidence in front of a jury of 5 separate counts of child sex trafficking, including being involved with the sexual abuse conduct, because she's not a saint, as the rehabilitation campaign being led by Donald Trump's people is making her out to be. She's a convicted sinner. So that was for the victims, of which Judge Engelmeyer noted there's over 1,000 of them. Because we've forgotten, and Trump certainly wants us to forget, the victims in all this. And they cannot be. And they can't be sidelined in this process. That was Section 1. Section 2 of the order was telling the world, and certainly the Trump administration, and anybody that's listening to set the record straight, that federal judges are not sitting on the Epstein files. The Trump administration is sitting on the Epstein files. Everything, the mother lode, he called it the mine lode of documents about Epstein, reside and are reposited with the Trump administration. And then he cites to all of the press releases and statements made by Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and letters between the Department of Justice and the FBI identifying the size of the mother lode, what's in the mother lode, and how it's been reviewed. Because he wants the world to know as a federal judge, don't let Donald Trump blame federal judges for not releasing files that we don't have. He has them. Look to him. He needs to provide these. They're in his power and control. So that was the second section. It was very effective. Third section of this order was announcing that he's not going to release the files, that he's looked at them in camera, meaning in secrecy. There's nothing there. Nothing there that's not already in the public domain. He even said at one point that your grounds for this is that the public demands the release of the grand jury, that it's of great public importance. That's what Pam Bondi wrote in her filings, which is completely at odds with what Trump says out loud politically to cover his ass, which is, this is boring. Why are we talking about child sex trafficking? I mean, he doesn't say that last part. This is boring details. There's nothing to see here. Can we talk about my tariffs? You're not American if you're a reporter and asking me about the child sex trafficking ring that I'm covering up. And yet she files with the court and says, we are entitled under Rule 6E of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure to pierce the veil of secrecy around grand jury materials. Pardon me, it's tough doing Pam Bondi's voice. Because it's of great public importance. The judge says, it's not of great public importance because you are sitting on the mother lode and you won't release them. And that's not grounds for me to release them. And just to be clear, there's nothing in them. The end. release the damn files. I mean, that's my artist rendering. Signed, Paul Engelmeyer, United States District Court Judge. So that's where we are with the Epstein in a week in advancing the ball here. And the victims are demanding justice again, and that the rehabilitation case against Ghislaine Maxwell stop. She's already been rewarded with 2 out of the 3 things she wanted. Immunity, not having to testify before Congress at any moment in time. And she got to go to a camp, effectively a luxury prison camp in Texas. That's enough. That's enough. And in the name of the victims, that's enough. To have her transferred was a poke in the eye to all of the victims that could only be perpetrated by a misogynist in chief, by a judge, sex abuser in chief who occupies the Oval Office. So I'm going to, when I come back from a short break, we're going to talk about the economy, Trumponomics, and the rest, so that you have what you need around your kitchen table, around your social media to set the record straight. I just said recently, I watched Mark Maron, great comedian, but really a social commentator, political commentator in his new show. He said, we're not watching with the Trump administration speaking truth to power. We're watching power to truth. Donald Trump is trying to use his power to crush truth. We see it with the Smithsonian Museum and 8 different museums being terrorized by the Trump administration just today, in ordering them to rewrite history, literally, to remove Donald Trump from an impeachment exhibit at the Smithsonian, to remove any references to slavery at the African American Experience Museum. But this is what a dictator wants to do. He has the power to control, right? The history is written by the winner, and that's what we're watching Donald Trump do. But we can't let him do it. We can't let him use power to bend the truth. We've got to continue to speak truth to each other. And that's what we do every week here on The Intersection. Number of ways to support us. Comments flying away here. I love those. This podcast is also audio. Pick us up on Spotify and Apple and leave a 5-star review and notes. Tell your friends about us. We could use more audio downloads, more video downloads on YouTube, so we can end up in the top rankings of the YouTube podcast. That's important as well. Follow me and all of our other contributors on Legal AF, the YouTube channel, Legal AF MTN, and free subscribe there. 10 new videos every day at the intersection of law and politics. And we got a Substack, Legal AF Substack, where we post all of these filings and orders, just like the one I just talked about, right there for you to read as well, so you can get the truth yourself. So we also have sponsors. So now a word from our pro-democracy sponsor. Are you sick of drinking your calories, of waking up hungover? Having some drinks can be fun, but I'm glad I found an alternative that lets me feel great in the moment and the next morning. Out of Office Gummies from Sol. The perfect buzz strength is a game changer. It provides the light social lift when you're out with friends, but the next morning, no pounding headache, no groggy fog, just leaves you ready to go. Sol is a wellness brand that believes feeling good should be fun and easy. Sol specializes in delicious hemp-derived THC and CBD products designed to boost your mood and help you unwind. The out-of-office gummies come in 4 different strengths, so you can find the perfect dose for your vibe, from a gentle microdose to a fully lit experience. With wellness at the forefront, you can feel good about what you're putting in your body. All of Sol's products are made from organically farmed, USA-grown hemp and are vegan, gluten-free, and low in sugar. And if you like their out-of-office gummies, you got to try their new out-of-office beverage, a refreshing alcohol-free alternative perfect for summer sipping. Bring on the good vibes and treat yourself to Sol today. Right now, Sol is offering my audience 30% off your entire order. Go to GetSol.com and use the code LegalAF. That's GetSol.com, promo code LegalAF for 30% off. The weather, it's heating up, and your nighttime bedroom temperature has a huge impact on your sleep quality. If you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Miracle Made sheets are inspired by NASA and use silver-infused fabrics that are temperature regulating so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. Using silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, no matter the weather, so you get better sleep every night. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some five-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Bacteria can clog your pores, causing breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Upgrade your sleep as the weather heats up. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo LegalAF at checkout, you'll get a free 3-piece towel set and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf and use the code LegalAF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/legalaf to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Welcome back to The Intersection, and thank you for our sponsors. One more sponsor of The Intersection is the Popok firm. As many of you know, I formed a firm really based on the demands and the requests of our audience. And so we're helping legal AFers and the Midas Mighty and those that support The Intersection in all of their legal matters related to catastrophic injury. It's where I can do the most good with my team of plaintiffs' lawyers around the country. So if you've been injured in a catastrophic accident or somebody in your family or loved one has, we're talking car accident, truck accident, ride share, Uber, Lyft accident, some sort of medical malpractice injury, and other things. We do other things as well, but we're really focused on that type. I've got an airplane crash, God forbid. We're representing people in some recent airplane crashes. Then call the Popok firm and we'll have somebody talk to you about evaluating your case. And if we end up taking the case, there's no charge. You won't be paid until we are. In other words, we're a contingency fee case. So contact us at 1-877-POPOK-AF, or you can go to the website, read all about the firm and me and the rest at thepopokfirm.com. All right, let's get back to Trumponomics. I've been doing one video, the first video every day on Legal AF about Trumponomics. And I think it's been a success because people are so interested to hear about how the policies that Donald Trump BS's about and defrauds the American people about, how they actually impact your everyday life. And we've got some new developments here that I want to tie together in one economic evaluation. Data all against the Trump administration. First of all, we now have the final numbers for inflation, and they're terrible. And they're all under Donald Trump's watch. You can't blame anybody else. Or as his Commerce Secretary recently said, this is now the Trump economy. He owns it. I agree. Inflation. I thought the reason most people voted for Donald Trump because they thought the prices were going in the wrong direction. Well, they're going in the wrong direction even more. The core inflation, which covers food and transportation, things that you need to live, that's up 3.1% year over year. So as I've said, if you went to the supermarket, you had a basket of things last year, identical basket of things you need to live for you and your family, your loved ones and seniors in your life. You're 3.1% short now with the exact same money in your wallet. That's it. And the Federal Reserve, which is our central banker about monetary policy, the reason they haven't lowered rates is their target inflation rate is 2%. By the time the tariffs come in, it'll be close to 4%. And that's not a good thing. And that is a reflection where Donald Trump is collecting lots of money to try to plug a hole in the amount of money he's not collecting on the Internal Revenue Service side because of the cut in taxes. He'll never be able to plug this hole with the amount of tariffs that he's collecting. He keeps bragging, 26 billion came in, 58 billion came in. First of all, less and less is going to come in on tariff payments because countries are going to adjust, turn away from the United States like Canada is, and turn towards Europe and other places. And they're going to start using modified behavior to avoid the tariffs. So Donald Trump's theory is, see, we sold this many goods last year times my tariff rate will be this much dollars. No, because you'll have less goods come in because people will work to avoid your tariff. Tariff avoidance policies are kicking in already. So that's the first problem. So prices up. Now, Donald Trump a few days ago made a big show. I did a couple of videos about this on bringing in some Heritage Foundation economist. Hold that thought, because he just named a Heritage Foundation economist to a major position. But it's a different one. Guy was wandering around. He had a visit with Donald Trump. Came in with a couple of homemade charts based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You know, the one where he just fired the commissioner? Based on their data. He had two charts. One showed that under the Bureau of Labor Statistics that he used it to make a point that the Biden administration didn't do well in the last economy and it should have been reported more based on Bureau of Labor Statistics stats numbers, which is a tough place to be when you're Donald Trump, because he says all the numbers from the BLS are rigged, which was the reason he fired the commissioner. So it's hard to say, hey, I like the numbers when they're over here. They show Biden had a terrible economy, but I don't like them over here. So Donald Trump fell in love with another chart. And that chart, this guy made up using, wait for it, Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers to show that the average American household got an extra $1,800 because since Trump's been in office. And I said at the time, that's a lie. That it may be even on average, but that means somebody's getting $1 million and lots of people are getting zero. And it may average out to $1,800 or $2,000. And now it's out because you can't rely on any economic data coming out of the Trump administration, controlled by the Trump administration, because they've either defunded it out of existence, fired all the experts and the statisticians because they've been cooking the books since day one. They announced it. The Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said the February of the beginning of the term, we're going to get rid of the statistics. We're going to change how gross domestic product is measured. We're going to come up with new numbers. We're cooking the books. They told us this on the way in. So they had to get rid of the people that weren't willing to cook the books, like the economist commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So we can't rely anymore on their numbers. We have to look to the Congressional Budget Office. We have to look to outside data points produced by the industry, tourism boards, supply chain organizations, manufacturing organizations, labor unions, industry-specific organizations create their own data, which they get from their members. That's what we're going to have to rely on. And Donald Trump can't cook all those books because he's not in control of it. So we're starting to get data from these other sources. So one is the Congressional Budget Office. They said, and their direction was, take Donald Trump's new budget that was just approved and run it through and show how it impacts Americans. And here's what they came up with today. The average American's not getting $1,800 in their pocketbook. The average American runs this way in this Congressional Budget Office report. One, the bottom 10% of America, the poorest 10%, are now, wait for it, $1,200 poorer because they just lost benefits that are part of their life package, like Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment, food stamps, SNAP benefits. Deduct those, you, the poor are now $1,200 poor. Top 10%, the richest, got richer, and not by a little, by a lot. According to the CBO, they got richer by $13,600 a household. What do you need to know about how Trumponomics works that's not already proven by that CBO report? If you're poor, especially if you're poor, middle class to poor, and I'm not here to undermine the poor or the middle class or those that don't have enough money that have to work 3 jobs. I have family members that fall into that category. I had grandparents, great-grandparents who first came to this country that fell into that category. Dignity in work, I believe in. But if you voted for Donald Trump, that was against your interests, because it's the red states that are getting nailed with the cut in federal funding, and it's the blue states where a lot of wealthy people live that aren't. And the Republican Country Club Republicans that live in wealthier states, they're not the ones that are getting screwed. It's the MAGA base that's getting screwed. Wake up. When are the scales going to drop from your eyes? I know there's a few that watch our shows here on the Midas Touch Network, like The Intersection, and I'm appealing to them. Back to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We've got a new development. Dr. E.J. Antoni has been nominated to be your new commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Who's that guy? Well, from what I can tell, he owns a lot of three-piece suits with ties that are out of style and fashion. He wears a lot of three-piece suits. I think it's because he looks like he's about 22. He has allegedly a doctorate in economics from some Illinois university. I apologize in advance. I never heard of. He runs some sort of Texas economic group, and he's MAGA to the core. And he's been critiquing the Bureau of Labor Statistics, except when he's not critiquing it. I caught clips, and I've done videos about it on Legal AF YouTube, in which Dr. Antoni, actually using the Bureau of Labor Statistics data that he's now crapping all over, said, see, Biden didn't do well, using the same data that we're now, for Trump, saying was rigged. Right. And that's the problem. What you want in a Bureau of Labor Statistics, which used to be the gold standard, the jobs report used to be the gold standard used around the world. What you want to lead that office, everybody agrees except for Trump and those around him, is a nonpartisan person who can be relied upon, who's not going to be the water carrier for the president. We just got the opposite. Bannon said it first. We need a right-wing MAGA person running our numbers. Correct. So they reached out to E.J. Antoni, self-professed, self-proclaimed expert on labor economics. Here's the problem. He's not a statistician. He doesn't understand how the Bureau of Labor Statistics works. And let me just explain it so everybody gets it. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, like any statistical modeling entity, has to balance between immediacy and accuracy. Immediacy and accuracy. So on the immediacy side, the economy and the stakeholders of the economy need data that's reasonably accurate. Now, they understand when the Bureau of Labor Statistics issues a jobs report that it's subject to change. Because first of all, the inputs for the job report come from states and other municipalities and governmental entities, and it's voluntary. They don't have to fill out their reports. And since COVID, only like 43% fill out their reports, maybe because they don't have the funds to fund the statistics and give the raw data. That's Trump's fault. So you have that. So they have to run it through a model. They have to do statistical modeling with limits. And then they get more data and more data. They do a look back and they revise up, down, or the same. Sometimes Donald Trump in the first term was the beneficiary of that. Sometimes he wasn't. The biggest revision that was ever done was actually not for Donald Trump or Joe Biden. It was done for a prior president back in the 1990s. It was almost a 1 million job revision. That's how hard it is to get this. But it's not rigged. And the economy and the stakeholders of the economy on Wall Street, financial services, and our global trading partners understand that those numbers can go up and down, that they're tentative. So the fact that Donald Trump lost 280,000 jobs that he never really had based on a modeling, it happens. Shit happens. Get over it. Instead of firing the numbers, so to speak, why don't you work on the failed economic policy that generated the numbers? Maybe that should say to you, crap, I didn't make 300,000 jobs in May and June. I only made 38,000. Maybe I should make some adjustments to my policy. That's what a rational person running our economy would do. But we don't have a rational person running our economy. Mark Maron called it best when I watched the stand-up. He said we have a clown king running our economy. And now the clown king is getting in business with the Chinese in violation of our national and undermining our national security. Yes, I know it's at the end of the intersection, but you heard me right. The clown king is violating and undermining our national security because NVIDIA one of 3 chip manufacturers in America, came and cut a deal with Donald Trump. Let us get out from under export controls to our enemy, China. Technology that goes to the Chinese military to allow it to upgrade itself, to allow it to modernize itself. I know people are like, well, they got chips too. Somebody wrote me that. Oh, you're showing your American bias, Popok. They have chips. Yeah, but they don't have our chips. They don't have our AI chips. They don't have NVIDIA's Blackwell chips, which are the industry leaders. They don't have AMD's chips. Now, these chip manufacturers, very interesting. Donald Trump's always like, I'm bringing chip manufacturing back to the United States. No, that was Joe Biden. In fact, NVIDIA and AMD, and to a certain extent Intel, are what they call fabless, not fabulous, fabless, meaning they don't manufacture, they don't fabricate. They fab other places. Taiwan, primarily. South Korea. That's where the actual chips are made. So Donald Trump's not bringing jobs back in chip manufacturing because the jobs aren't even here. And he's cutting deals with NVIDIA. Now he's going to let them sell to the Chinese and let them modernize their army in return for a 15% tribute payment to the U.S. government. Are you effing out of your mind? I mean, I know the NFL's allowing smelling salts again. Donald Trump needs to take a whiff of a smelling salt. You don't sell our high-tech AI and other chips effectively to the Chinese military. That's why we have export controls that are supposed to be controlled by the Commerce Department. That's why we got rid of TikTok under the Biden administration with Congress in bipartisan fashion. Because it's a weapon of the Chinese government and military. My friends out there that are leaders on TikTok, God love you. More power to you. But that's what it is. Donald Trump just cut a deal to let NVIDIA, for effectively $3 billion payment, sell hundreds of billions of dollars to chips and flood the market in China. There goes our national security. That was the reason for the export control. That was the reason to ban TikTok, to protect our national security. Because the people around Donald Trump are not national security experts. Who, Marco Rubio? Little Marco down in Florida? I know Marco Rubio. He was a partner in one of my law firms. Never met the guy, although I'm pretty sure he picked up a paycheck. Yeah. That Marco, because he's the Secretary of State, but he's not really the Secretary of State. We know that's Steve Witkoff. Who else? Howard Lutnick, Commerce Secretary. He ran a family office. Had no national security concerns about any of his products because his products were brokering and broking and commissions and volume and turnover and velocity of trades. What's that have to do with national security? So Donald Trump doesn't have anybody around him that will say to him, speaking truth to power, no, don't sell the chips. The extra dollars to the American public to try to plug the hole you've made from your tax cuts isn't worth it. It's not the first time Donald Trump's gotten into bed with one of our allies or enemies. We own, as an American people, effectively, a controlling interest in U.S. Steel because Donald Trump sold it to the Japanese. U.S. Steel is not owned by U.S. Steel or American interest. It's owned by Japanese interest. Donald Trump says, yeah, but I got a cover story for that. We own a golden share. We got the golden share. We allow... Yeah. You're now in business with Japan against actual American steel companies. Well, I got 15% from our chip manufacturers. A, that's not going to help bring jobs back because it's made in Taiwan, effectively. Secondly, you just sold out our national security for effectively $3 billion. I thought it would be worth more, honestly. Rest in peace, national security. It's now dead under Donald Trump. So domestic security, undermined. Foreign security, undermined. National security, undermined. And we're only 7-8 months into this administration. What can you do about it? Let's leave on a hopeful note. Not the Grim Reaper. What do you do about it? Well, many of the things that we talk about would not be happening if we had Democrats running Congress, running the House. Because they would be checks and balance. There would be investigations. There would be impeachment proceedings over most of what Donald Trump is doing. That's what you have to focus on. That's why we talk about congressional maps. That's why we talk about the census. That's why we talk about voting rights being taken away, and why it's important to fight that fight now, and voter registration now. And we do it together, right? Because we're joined at the hip. We vibrate at the same frequency here on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF. And together, I assure you, we will overcome the Trump administration. May take one step at a time, but we see the runway, and we're going to do it together. I'm glad you're here on The Intersection. Every Tuesday nights, join me here on YouTube, on audio podcast platforms, on Legal AF YouTube channel, on Legal AF the podcast, which I do on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Also about law and politics. I have a co-anchor, Karen Friedman-Ignifilo, on Wednesdays. Sometimes we have a guest host, or Saturdays with Ben Meiselas. So until my next The Intersection, this is Michael Popok, and I am reporting. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states, and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice.